Hey everyone, Dr. Josh Axe here. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast. This week as a guest, we have Heather Brown. She is an advocate for holistic wellness and well-being. She is on a mission to empower women to thrive in body, mind, and spirit. And today we're going to get more into some just really practical things you can do to raise a healthy family, to improve your spiritual health, and improve your mental health as well. All right, Heather, well, I am so excited to chat today. One of the first things I want to ask you is your focus tends to be a little bit more broad than a lot of people I interview, in that you focus not only just health of the body, but also the mind and the spirit. Talk to me about why you think that's so important, especially in today's age, to not only focus on physical health, but mental and spiritual as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the biggest thing that I have, and I'll just preface and say that I'm a believer. I'm a Christian, and I feel like really honestly, I love health. I'm super passionate about it. I fell in love with it growing up, just cheering and playing volleyball and doing all the things. And at that time, I thought like, man, this is fun. I love getting my heart rate up. I love the competitive nature. And then obviously you get married, you become a mom, you start working your business, and life kind of starts to hit more. And I realized, okay, yes, I can get to the gym, but ultimately, if my relationship with Christ isn't rock solid, then that's kind of just like one piece of the puzzle that has dropped out, and it's a major one. So my mental health is suffering if my spiritual health isn't in line. And really, if I'm just working out my body and all I'm getting out of it is, yay, I'm in the right size jeans, but I still don't feel good about myself or have the confidence in who Christ called me to be. And I kept running into women that were the same way in the gym. And so I really wanted to be able to minister and speak to that woman.
Yeah, that's good. Well, one of the things I know that when we were talking about who your audience is and who you're reaching, it's a lot of women, and women that are struggling with a number of issues. It could be self-esteem issues, it could be as a more of a mindset issue, or it could be something related to hypothyroidism. There's a number of issues. How do you help these women heal and get better? Like, what are some of the things when you're talking to a woman and they said, I'm overwhelmed, I've got a thyroid issue, I'm just unhealthy. What are some of your go-tos to helping them experience a health breakthrough?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I guess I'll get a little bit more into my background and my story just to kind of set it up for how I even felt like the Lord prepared me for this type of journey. But long story short, and this probably be way TMI and except for anybody except for the mamas in your audience. But when I had my first little boy, he's now 8. I have 2 boys, 8 and 5. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, and I married my college sweetheart. So that's just a little bit of like who I am in a nutshell. And when I had my 8-year-old, I was fortunate enough that my husband and I got married early. We were only 22 when we got married. We waited a good while before we had kids. But in some ways, it's like that was a really big benefit that I waited so long. And then in other ways, it felt like it really rocked my world, maybe even different than my counterparts that had kids earlier. I always say that transition from kid number 0 to 1 is, to me, the hardest transition. 1 to 2 kind of felt like, well, you've kind of already figured out the major hardness of it. And obviously everybody's experience is different. But when I had Leighton, not only did I have a 4th degree tear, which is the worst, that's the worst tear that you can have. And so essentially the doctor gives you this little donut that you sit on, and she tells you you can't walk past your mailbox for about 6 weeks. And as someone who really, at the root of it, I found out that I had almost made fitness and health and wellness an idol of mine. I taught Pure Barre at the time. I've been teaching barre-based exercise for close to 10 years at that point. And so I really found my identity in Heather Brown that deals with the stress and whatever is going on of life, of getting to the gym and working that off and getting those endorphins going. And so when I had that 4th degree tear, when that happens to your body, they have you come in for a 2-week postpartum checkup. And so when I went in for that 2-week postpartum checkup, my doctor said, I thought it was just general, hey, how are you doing? And I said to her, because she was also a Pure Barre client of mine, so we had a pretty good, relationship. I said, well, I think I just want to know when I'm going to feel like myself again. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, I'm crying multiple times a day. I don't feel like myself. And I just want to know when that is going to get regulated. And Dr. Josh, honestly, I'm so thankful to people like you who now speak to, just pills and big pharma and all the things that come at you, but I didn't have that knowledge then. And so what she said to me was, okay, well, we're going to put you on an antidepressant. And I was kind of like, well, wait, we're doing what? And she was like, yes, you have classic symptoms of postpartum depression. And Dr. Josh, even just with you talking to me for an hour earlier on my podcast, like in general, I'm a happy, upbeat person. That's just kind of like who God has made me to be. And so it really felt just alienating. And so like, okay, Lord, where are you? And I don't understand what's happening. I literally just started tail spinning. And like I said, I was crying every day on the couch. I didn't know how to take care of myself in this new broken body. And I remember my husband coming home after work and being like, well, how did the day go today? And I was like, I've just been sitting here pumping and feeding the baby and like trying to, heal myself and like going off. And he was like, okay, but Heather, you just have to remember literally your only job right now is to heal your body and to take care of the baby. And to me as an achiever, Dr. Josh, are you familiar with the Enneagram by chance?
Yeah, you're a 3.
Yeah, I'm a 3.
Yeah.
So being a 3 and not being able to, achieve and strive and do all the things and go be all the things to all the people, I really, really struggled. And so what God did to teach me in that is to start to go back to what I know to be true. And that being that I am who God says that I am. And even though I was like flat on my back and I couldn't do anything and I was crying and my hormones were all out of whack and I didn't even know where to start, I knew at the end of the day, I just had to start somewhere. And so for me, that looked like I'm big into meal planning. So at the time, I also worked part-time at a meal planning company. And I was like, okay, well, this is sad because really what I should have been doing is running to the Lord first. But instead I was like, well, I can plan our meals for the week and that will make me productive. And so I'd sit down and I'd write out our meal plans, but then it kind of started to evolve. And honestly, God didn't really expand my mind to even understand what all was happening until about 2 years ago. And that's when I completely revolutionized my brand and went from being just meal planning and a health focus, but more into mind, body, and spirit health. Because what I started doing was even when I was broken on that couch, I would be like, okay, I know that I need to be in communion with Christian believers with my small group. I know that I need to be doing a Bible study of some kind. I know that I can do my meal plan, and I know that I need to do something that's just going to make me feel like me. And so I started to take Sundays and make Sundays be my day that I would quote unquote reset. I always talk about the Sunday reset, and I would figure out what can I do from this broken position to take baby steps towards mind, body, and spirit health. And what the Lord was so gracious to teach me is that, like I said earlier, if that spirit part is broken, it doesn't matter how great my macros are. It doesn't matter how good my workouts are. It doesn't matter how much I'm quote unquote giving myself great self-care. But if I'm not relying on Him and finding my true worth in Him, then all the rest is for naught. I feel like so now finally getting back to your question, which is what do I tell women that are, I guess, was your question like stuck or they're struggling with lots of different things?
Yeah. Like I said, I know you talk to a lot of women who are struggling with a number of issues, and so when they're have these obstacles or things they're wrestling with, what is your advice to them?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing is just to start small. And I know that sounds so cliche. It really does. But I think that to me, one of the biggest things has been learning, like you talk about often, to look outside of just the medical system and just a pill, but kind of looking at, well, what does the Bible say about getting healthy? And so I love to encourage women to go to His Word first and just to start to kind of peel back some of those layers that might be that they're just thinking like, well, I'm supposed to eat keto and I'm supposed to do this and should I be doing dairy? Like, how does this affect me? I really just like to help equip them with the tools of starting small where they're at, because the biggest thing to me is if I tell you right now, like, yes, get outside in the sunlight every morning and get out there every night, and you should be taking these 14 supplements and drinking all this water and exercising 5 days a week, but also getting your steps, they're just going to glaze over and not even be able know where to start. So my biggest thing is just trying to say, let's talk about where you could practically start with your mind, with your body, and with your spirit. And then knowing, and I'll say, I am not a doctor, so I'm happy to help you find somebody in your area or online that I trust that could help you with any kind of outstanding physical sources like you, obviously. And I go to a naturopath and a functional medicine doctor here in Birmingham. It's called Archetype Health, Dr. John. And so he's really taught me a lot just about getting outside of the medical field and just utilizing medicine. And to me, that has also been a really powerful tool. But at the end of the day, I think it's to start small.
Yeah, it's really good. One of the things that I think that where a lot of people tend to get stuck is that, and I'll give you an example of this, is people will start looking for their information on Google and on Instagram. Okay. And then I'll throw in doctors here in a minute, but they'll be looking at social media. They'll be searching online, and what you're going to find on there are a lot of opinions. And you're going to find out, you're going to say, if, let's say you're struggling with postpartum depression, like you talked about, it's like you're going to have one doctor say one thing, another say another thing, and some is going to be good, some not so good. And you're going to find that across any searches you do. And then maybe you go into your doctor, and if they're most likely to be an average doctor, and if they're medical, they're actually below average if they're very medical, because they don't even have any tools to actually help you get better, only maybe maintain a crisis. And so what happens is you're never really, unless you find truth, you will not be free. Unless you actually find and discover the truth for why you feel like this, you'll never be healthy. And so this is to your points, one of the reasons why the Bible is such a great tool is it is the truth.
Yes.
And so you'll know that you're going to find truth in there. Now, maybe there are certain things that aren't in there in terms of, certain herbs or things that probably could help you too. But generally, it's the most foundational and the best place to start that you need to be soaking in. It's I was interviewing Carrie Underwood, and Carrie's a friend, and she said, she reads two types of books. She reads the book and then books about the book. And
love that.
Yeah. And so with that, I think you want to read the book, and you want to read books that really align with the principles of the book, right?
Yes.
In terms of, your body has an amazing capacity to heal, and, living in tune with all of these amazing things that God's put around us, everything from food to herbs to spices to the power of prayer to essential oils and so much more. So anyways, I resonate with what you're sharing in terms of like going to the book first and having that as the foundational piece of healing, because there's lots of, there are lots of advices, a lot of advice in there for healing, everything from overcoming depression and anxiety to infertility. So
yes.
it's all in there.
Well, Dr. Josh, I so agree with you. And I often give this analogy is that a lot of times, people will be like, well, yes, I go to church on Sundays. And I'm like, okay, but that would be like me saying, well, I go to the gym on Saturdays. Okay, if I show up at the gym once a week, am I going to see muscle definition? Am I going to notice a change in my endurance? Am I going to notice a change in even lots of different health markers? Probably not. So same thing with your spiritual health. If you just, check the box of showing up at church, but you're not even, even saying to the Lord as you're going in, like, Lord, I'm expecting you to show up today and meet me here. And if you're not, in a small group and in community. And I mean, Dr. Josh, I really do think that there is a crisis in the church right now where because of COVID, we've just had this mass exodus of people that have just left the church. And it's just not, easy to get to church and to actually have to show up and get your kids there. Trust me, I get it. My husband is in the medical field, and so he's on call lots of times. And just this past weekend, I took my kids to church. You know what? We were 20 minutes late, but we got there. And when we got there, y'all, I mean, God just does the coolest things when you show up expectant. The sermon ended up being on Sabbath. And I was like, Lord, you know what? Like, I had a bad attitude about coming in here, and I kind of was a little bit frustrated because nobody slept good last night. But I still showed up out of faithfulness, and you blew my mind because you knew that I needed to hear this message today, that I really struggle still to this day. I'm like, it's a continual renewing process of sanctification, but I struggle with striving. And the Lord really got me, by the hands and was like, Heather, are you still Sabbathing? Are you still resting? Are you still finding those quiet moments to just be with me? And I thought, no, Lord, you're right. What I've been doing is I've been checking the box for showing up to church, and I am, in his word, listening to worship music, but I'm not taking the time just to be still and really leaning into that Sabbath. And I think that he's designed it so well. We were in Genesis talking about literally the first Sabbath ever that got established. And I think that women just really need encouragement to not just fit God into the corners of your life, but if God is truly who you say he is, does your life model that he is your number one foundation and you're fitting other things around him? And then same thing with your marriage and with your kids that he's called you to. And then everything else falls behind it in the pockets. Really thinking about setting aside, if your kids' sports are falling on Sunday mornings. I know that's controversial to say, but maybe you shouldn't be doing that sport or finding a different league. But really just prioritizing that spiritual health and showing up in the daily and not just once a week will literally revolutionize your life.
Yeah. I was thinking about this, but too much comfort will kill you or too little comfort will kill you. I mean, people need to find the right balance of this, right? I think that this is why there is a Sabbath, is you need a day of comfort. They call the Holy Spirit the comforter. And so we need a day of that. And that doesn't mean it is stillness. It's time with God. It's time with family. It's time to kind of, plug yourself in and get recharged. And people aren't getting enough of that, but also people are getting too comfortable. And I think that's why they're not going to church. It's like, well, it's just easier to maybe watch a sermon on my computer, but then it maybe only happens actually once a month. And so there's little of that. By the way, when in writing my book, Think This, Not That, one of the studies I came across was people that attend religious services are more virtuous. So they have better character than people that don't. So if you're going to synagogue or church or any worship service, you have better character. You're more generous. So people that go to religious services, again, that's another form of character. And they're also happier. They have less depression, anxiety. But so the studies, even the clinical evidence proves that just showing up on Sundays or Saturdays or going to that religious service, you will be healthier, happier, greater character. Everything in life will get better. But again, this sort of comfort, it's like it's a drug, right? Yeah. It's a drug. I mean, people numb out on their social media devices to feel a form of comfort, but in fact, it's like this. Again, it's this drug that sort of leaves you in non-reality. And so it's dangerous. Yeah. Let me ask you this about social media. I mean, what's your advice to people? You have kids. At what age will you allow your kids to start using social media? Like, what's your plan there?
Yeah, great question. So, like I said, my oldest is 8 and my youngest is 5. I'm a really, let me say this. During 2020 and even prior to that, I felt really convicted by the Lord that if I was going to be in the online space as an entrepreneur, which I am, all my accounts are Healthy by Heather Brown. And honestly, I feel like the Lord has blessed them so much. Like I feel very confident that I'm walking in my calling. However, I think that as a business owner and knowing the reality of sin in the online space, a lot of it centers around porn and human trafficking and all these really uncomfortable things. And so, the learning all about that and the effects that it has on kids and women and teens and just the statistics surrounding teens on social media is completely staggering and heartbreaking. So I think that it's like this both and. I know that I want my kids in my house to get social media so that they have the guidance of a parent to learn how to use it before I'm like, oh, okay, let me just send you off to college and you have no idea what to do with a phone or social media or what practical boundaries to put in place. But I also don't want to give it to them too young. I actually just was interviewing on the podcast a guy that focuses in a lot on, and I know you do too, on ADHD and breathing and just all the things. And he was saying how even having your kids watching TV versus an iPad is a game changer, even in the ADHD world. I'm sure you can go in on that too. But long story short, some boundaries that we put in place for now that I think are going to help lead us to that decision as they get older is the boys have to earn their time on the iPad, and the iPad is only allowed on weekends. Now, granted, I know that that's probably controversial for some people and they can't imagine their life. I'm just telling you what works for us. But typically that way we eliminate this whole, every single week being like, can I have the iPad after dinner? Can I have the iPad after school? It's like, no, it's not the weekend. And that's the answer. I'm not going to answer it again. So really putting those boundaries as they're growing up, even on their screen time and on the TV time, I think is setting us up, hopefully, for more success once they do get old enough to have a device. My husband and I haven't even really entertained it yet. We've watched several of our friends' kids even get the watches instead of the iPhone, because that way, at least it's not, tons of social media and all the other negative impacts it can have on the brain and on their, self-esteem and all those things. But I imagine that maybe once they're 16 or so because they'll be driving. But I mean, if I had my druthers, I'd get them something like the Bark phone or a Gab phone or something that doesn't allow social media. And I actually have a therapist friend. She's one of my dear friends, Brent, and she was telling me that with their teenagers, they made them write out what are you going to use this social media platform for, and how are you going to use it for good? And so they have to write that out so that they're stating their goals, they're stating their intentions. And then once they have that first slip up with the phone, the parents will pull back out what they wrote and they'll be like, is this mistake you made? It's okay. Everybody's gonna make mistakes, but does that go back to what you said you were going to use it for? No. Okay. Well, then this is a great learning opportunity. Maybe we'll take it away for a little bit. And then once you earn it back, then we'll let you have it back in smaller portions until we regain that trust with you on social media.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that, Chelsea and I, now we're a long ways off from this, generally speaking, but, I think we have some friends of ours, and one of the friends, what they've done essentially is their kids get their license at 16, at 17, so their last year of high school, they let them have it, so they can train them like driver's ed. Like here's very similar. Here's how we're going to train you how to use it. Now I think they let the girls use YouTube for certain things and other things, but in terms of Instagram or any of those, it's not until that final year of high school, and it's even under constant guidance, and a very set time limit and that sort of thing. But when you look at the research, I was reading this article the other day in terms of for women in high school, especially for these young girls, what it does obviously to their self-image and esteem. We know it's really traumatic. And basically, if you would compare, if you would not know what it is, let's say you said, okay, this, we're going to give this kid French fries or a pack of cigarettes or social media. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Now, which do you think for whatever, each day and which would be the worst for their health on average? Now, by the way, I don't know we don't have exact data around this, but it's likely the social media.
I would have to guess that. I mean, it's awful. Super duper scary. This is incredibly depressing and sad, but we have had 2 kids at a local high school take their lives this year, and it's just unbelievable to watch how social media and just like their minds aren't ready for it, y'all. They're just not. And I mean, Dr. Josh, you could certainly speak to that more so from just the medical standpoint, but it has just been debilitatingly sad to watch our community just grieving these losses. And then not only that, obviously that's worst case scenario, but then also thinking about the rise in ADHD, the rise in ADD, the rise in self-esteem issues, the rise in even like eating disorders. It is insane. And so much of it is running around all these social media platforms.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? So obviously there's social media. What do you think it is about social media? What do you think it is about social media that is causing what you're talking about, the increase in suicide and the increase in, negative thoughts and all of the negative side effects?
Yeah. Have you read, I think it's called Made for People by Justin Whitmore Early?
Early. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I have the book. I've read his other book, Habits of the Household, which is absolutely awesome, by the way. If you want to create great family habits, it is the best book to buy.
Yes, he's phenomenal.
But I have it sitting on my shelf. I started flipping through it, but I haven't read Made for People, the full thing yet.
Yes. And pro tip, if you have a premium Spotify account, I know that currently, I don't know when this episode will air, if it'll still be out there, but it's free for you to listen to if you have a paid Spotify account. So I've been listening to it in the car recently. But he talks so much about how not only did God create us to be made for, we have a God-sized hole in our heart, essentially. Not only are we made to be in church, like we were talking about earlier, but we also are made to have almost like this hole, this need that God's created innately in us to need to connect with community. And I have had so many conversations with parents that have older kids than mine and with other people just about this exact topic. Why do you think social media is so bad for this younger generation? What is this crisis that's going on in the younger generation? And obviously, I think it's multifactorial, but a big problem that I see is that kids are so content just to be served on their social media with all these instant dopamine hits and with all this, just crying for their attention. They're addicted to it, all the things like you were just saying, with choosing that over, cigarettes or even fries. Like that is what they're addicted to and what they would choose and the most negative on their health. But because of that, they're then not connecting with other human beings the way that perhaps prior generations have. Eric and I went last year for a date day and we went shooting, and the police officer that was leading our shooting day at the range also trains a local police task force, like all the protocols for how to try to defuse a situation and when to use a gun and so on and so forth. And he's probably in his upper 40s, early 50s. And he said, one of the scariest things to me is that this generation that's coming up in our police task force doesn't know how to talk to people. And so often when we would be going up to a house, the first mode of operandi should be that we're going to try to talk ourselves out of this. We're going to try to de-escalate the situation. And he said, I literally joke with them and be like, do you want to ask them for their phone numbers so you can text them? Because you can only text, but you can't talk. And so he was like, these guys are just straight up wanting to go in there and like blow everybody up with guns when it's like, no, that should be step like 17. And so it's just so fascinating hearing it from a police officer and then hearing it from friends that say, oh yeah, my kids have no desire to get their driver's license or to learn how to drive. And I'm like, what?
I've actually heard this from there's a friend of mine, and he said, my daughter doesn't, she's just not interested in learning how to drive.
And I'm like,
in high school for me, that would have been,
yes.
Yeah.
You're like, freedom. Let's go.
Yes.
Because you wanted to get out and be out with your friends, and your parents weren't always going to take you everywhere. So I think that it really does have to do with this crisis of not being engaged with real people, real connections, real relationships. And that's what God designed us to do. And so I think that that is one of the biggest dangers, because the more that you're sucked into that world and the less that you're having real people who know you and your heart, connect with you, care for you, encourage you, well then, that's a scary and dangerous scenario you're setting yourself up for. And so at the root of it, I think that that's a large part of it.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, we're not, everything has become superficial and spread wide, and it doesn't go deep. And it's like, if something is just superficial, it only lasts so long. And then you just feel there's a sense of emptiness there. And so this is, it's like people might have 1,000 friends on social media, but really 0 friends.
Yeah.
Actually 0 friends in their life.
Yeah.
There's a quote I was reading this week, and something that I was writing on my social media in regards to what a true friend is. And this is, and this is true, is that, a lot of times people think friends are those people that are there for you when you're having a hard time. And that's part of it. But the other part is, hey, who are those people that are cheering you on? Who are those people that are making you better? I mean, it's this principle that Solomon talks about in Proverbs of iron sharpens iron. We need people in our life that are helping encourage us and nourish us and pick us up when we've fallen, but also challenging us to say, go back out there and get them. But most people aren't getting either of that. They're just sitting there numbing out and not even living in reality. And it's such a problem, and just what that does even to our health is incredibly damaging. When you look at the side effects of sort of this, of just living in this state of sort of dopamine, like we're on a slot machine all of the time, it's very toxic to the body. So, I know we could talk about this all day. I'd love to also get your thoughts though on some other things. We also talked about the devastating side effects of social media. Here's an interesting question for you. If somebody's listening to this and they're saying to themselves, you know what, I really don't have any good guy friends or girlfriends or people in my life, or maybe I just have one and I know I need community. What's your advice to people on how do you go out and create this community of greatness? How do you go out and create deep and meaningful relationships with other people? How do you find it and how do you do it? Yeah,
great question. So I will say that I am very thankful that my husband and I had a really, and I think this is hopefully will be an encouragement to moms and dads that are listening to this, that his parents created almost like this generational community health mindset that has trickled down to us. And so I'm so thankful that they set that up for us. And if nothing else, you can set that up for your kids now. And like we always say, it starts in the home. So for Eric and I, we find it really interesting, but we are one of the few people in our friend group that will initiate things. And I think that that's becoming less and less common. And we actually, we were kind of chuckling with some friends the other day because we asked them to, one of our favorite things to do is to invite people over, come to our backyard. We've got a hot tub. Kids can bring their swimsuits. We're going to have a bonfire in the back and we're going to throw some s'mores on for the kids. So it's easy. It's low key. And even when people don't want to have you inside their house, it's still a way you can be in the backyard, but you can be together, et cetera, et cetera. So we were kind of joking with them. They finally came over and we were like, man, we had to invite you guys over about 5 times before you got here. And they were like, yeah, because we don't initiate. Like, we're just not good at that. And I thought, okay, well, it's kind of like what you and I were talking about on my podcast episode, Dr. Josh, where it's like, if you don't use the muscle, though, you lose it. And so if you're not using that muscle of trying to invite people and creating community, you're going to lose it. And maybe you even used to be a super social person back in high school or back in college, or maybe even pre-2020. And now you're stuck in this rut of not utilizing the muscle of getting out there and introducing yourself and being the friend that you want somebody to be to you. That is a muscle you can get stronger. So Eric and I, some of our favorite things to do where we involve people, and I'm like kind of embarrassed to tell the story, but here we go. So we have an annual wine and cheese party at our house, and it is so much fun. Eric and I provide the cheeses, and then we invite couples to come, and they bring one wine to be judged, and then they bring one wine to go in the wine pot that, the winners get to choose from or what have you. And Eric comes up with, the sheet, and they have to rank the wines, and they have to write down the flavor notes of it. And then he has trivia questions at the bottom. Fun. It's so much fun. And so we'll do and we invite people from all different walks of our life. Some people are from church, or some people are from the kids' school. Some people are neighbors. And in fact, this is the kind of embarrassing part, but we went to a brunch in our new neighborhood, and we were sitting outside having margaritas, having lunch. The kids are playing on the bouncy house, and the couple next to us just starts talking to us. And Eric was like, "Hey, I know we don't know you, but we're having a party at our house in 2 weeks. You guys want to come to the wine and cheese party?" And so as we went around the circle, introducing everybody when they first got here, the couple was like, yeah, this random guy, we can't even remember his name. He invited us to this party, and we thought, why not come? So I think it really is just getting out of your comfort zone and thinking about how you want friends, everybody else around you wants friends too. So don't be afraid to make those little steps, those little connections. If there's somebody that you jokingly talk back and forth with on Instagram all the time, but you haven't seen them in years, or maybe you like and comment on their stuff, shoot them a DM and be like, hey, I'm going to go grab coffee next week at 9:30. Can you meet me up there? Or I think a gym and a church is a really natural and easy way to get your foot in the door with people. And even after the gym class, you can say to the person next to you, hey, there's a coffee shop right over there. I heard that they've got free ice cream for kids today. You want to grab our kids and go? It's de-complicating what it is. It literally is just you asking somebody to hang out. It's not that hard. I promise once you do it.
Yeah. And it's so worth it. I had a friend of mine, Michael Hyatt. He's a leadership expert. And Michael was telling me that he started a men's group. And for him, he said, this is the most fulfilling thing I've done in the past 5 years. One of the most fulfilling things is starting this group. And he said, one other thing we do, and another friend, Donald Miller, does this, but really getting other families together that share, that are virtuous families, that have character, that want to, make the world a better place and want to raise really kids with great morals and values. And so, I'm very conscious now of, I do this men's group, and it's been something that's caused me to grow more than anything else. And so I get together with 8 guys once a month for 3 hours. We read a book together, we share, we do dinner afterwards. So I guess it ends up being close to probably 5 hours. We meet from like 3 o'clock to probably 8 at night, something like that. We spend time together, but it's just been so powerful. And we've been doing it for about 5 years now. And a similar thing with just other couples being able to get together and do that. And Donald calls it a community of purpose. He said, build your community of purpose, where writing down, and he said, don't just do the ones that are just, you already know. Write down, okay, if I could get together just 5 families. Now, whatever number is you want it to be, maybe it's 6, maybe it's 4, but this number of families that they're really, they're growing, they're getting better, they're pursuing God, they're pursuing making a difference in their work, whatever it is, raising great kids, and spend time together, and then sometimes even weave it into other things. It could be, one, it could just be hanging out together. It could be doing a Bible study together. It could be, hey, once a year we do this mission with all of our kids together, Habitat for Humanity or whatever it is. And this goes back to another thing we said earlier. A lot of people don't do it because it's not comfortable. Pursuing people, building relationships, it takes work. It takes effort. It really does. I mean, it's hard. I think once you get past out of your 20s and you get married, it takes a lot of work to build friendships.
That it does.
A lot of work.
And I did love what you said about building intentional communities around families. I thought this was incredible. And so I'm going to share this. Hopefully it'll be a good idea for somebody else. Yeah. But so we go to a private school for one of my boys. And so it's Christian based, all these things. And one of the moms just sent out, because most class groups, you'll either have a Facebook group or a group meet or some way that the teacher and or the parents are communicating. So at the beginning of the school year, she just sent out this blanket message and she said, hey, me and my family are interested in getting together a boys Bible club for all the kindergartners. Would anybody be interested in doing that? And of course, everybody's like, yeah, sounds great. But number one, props to her for doing that and taking that first step. Second of all, usually when you put it out there, somebody's going to jump in on it. And what I loved what she said after the fact, she said, Heather, because now she's one of my closest friends. And she said, Heather, I did that because I knew that the people that were in this class that would take the time out of their day to get their kids this boys Bible study would, number one, be families that probably had similar values to us. Number two, then my kids would get to be around other adults and Bible believing Christians. So if there is something as we're growing up in the school together, more than likely we would, all stay in the same area school, then they would have other parents that they would trust if they were too scared to tell me something ever for some reason. They're seeing other Bible believing husbands and wives and them walking it out, not just us being the one, rule stickler household or what have you. And she was like, finding those people has been a game changer for us, because now I feel comfortable to text or ask all these moms, like, what do y'all think about this TV show? My kid's asking to watch this movie. How is it? We're up against this obstacle. And now you have this group of people that are walking through life together. And not only are your kids getting to, enrich with those Bible rich stories. We get together once a month on a Monday afternoon. Everybody knows the last Monday of the month. And the kids typically play basketball for the first 20 minutes. We have snacks for them. And then one of the husbands leads the Bible study for about 15 minutes. Then they play again at the end. And it's like, my heart could burst because my little boy's teacher was like, are you part of this boys Bible club? Because all the boys are talking about it when it's going to happen and are so excited about it. And she said, it's just so cool to watch how the Lord is using that group to make these kids excited about Jesus. And so that's one small example that we've done. And then in 2020, this is again, telling on myself, but we, at the beginning of 2020, me and about 5 girls from the gym, literally met in a backyard. This was back in the very beginning when nobody knew what was happening. Her husband measured out 6 feet apart for our chairs around a fire pit. And we would just meet out there and sit 6 feet apart. And she would have toilet paper out there. So if we needed to pee, we like went out in the woods. And we're all different ages of kids. But now those are some of my closest girlfriends. And if I wouldn't have, put it out there or been willing to say yes or be a little bit uncomfortable to see what it was about, I would be missing out on daily life with these women now who are just some of my closest core.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something to be said about doing things that are hard, right? Do hard things. I mean, this is, again, the reality is what we're talking about. Getting healthy can be hard, right? You got to change things up. There's certain things you can't eat. You got to go find organic or grass fed. You got to make bone broth. Now you can get it easier. But my point is like, that's hard. Fasting's hard. I mean, these things are hard to do. Keeping your kids off social media. It's easier just to say, yeah, iPad and social media, any age, anytime you want. It's hard to show up to church. It's hard to do these things. I think what people need to do is determine, this is where I want to be in my life. I want it to be meaningful. I want it to matter. And then work backwards on what's the best plan to get there. Even if it's the hardest plan, what's the right plan in order for me to get to the end of my life and say, you know what? I've raised kids up that are incredibly virtuous. They want to change the world. They're close to God. They have great kids and families themselves. They're not spoiled and entitled. They're incredibly grateful and kind. They don't have addictions. Right? What's your best chance of getting there? Where it's keeping them off social media and then highly monitoring it the last couple of years. And it's making them spend time outside and it's having them go on mission trips and paint. So it's like, okay, I know where I want them to end up. I need to reverse engineer the plan. Even if it's hard, we're going to do it. And I think that's another thing that's really valuable for people is determining this is where I want to end up. Most people never think about that. It reminds me of a stat, and it's only 25 in a survey. Only 25% of people on average know what their purpose is, and that's not even people living it out. So if only 25% of people know what their purpose is, or most of their purpose, well, then what percent of people know and actually are following through on a plan to get there? So it's a really low percentage. But if you want to live like the 1% do, in the different areas of your life, the top 1% that are just have great families, great lives that are really, and I'm not talking about just wealth. I'm talking more about just, living the best life possible. What do they do? And then go and reverse engineer that and live that out yourself is just so important for people. Well, Heather, I know you interview a lot of people yourself, and you also spend time around a lot of it sounds like a lot of just great people. What is a question I have for you? What is maybe one of the best things you've ever heard on your podcast, or a piece of advice or something that really, when somebody said that it really impacted you in a deep way?
Oh my gosh. I'm like, there's so many. I don't even know where to start.
Well, you can share two if you'd like, but yeah, share a couple.
Okay. I think specifically as a female, one of the things that impacted me the most was I was talking with Dr. Nicole Jardim, and she came on to talk about hormone health and periods and birth control and all the things. And I think it's just like knowing that I have to do the hard work, again, coming back to the hard work of learning my body and keeping up with my cycle and all those things. I literally had no idea that I should be. And again, this is like next level health. For some people, it's going to be like, I just got to get to the gym every day. But I've been practicing and being in the health and wellness journey now for like 20 plus years. So just now for me, figuring out, okay, that birth control that I was trusting the doctor on when I was a teenager and just got on it to help me have less cramps, that actually really affected me. And my mom even was telling me about it. She was like, Heather, you do not need to be on birth control. This is terrible for you. Mm-hmm. It can increase all these things. I had no idea. And of course, because, you're young and you think you're invincible and you know everything, I was like, yeah, mom. Okay, whatever. I eventually got off of it. But that part of her saying, like, you need to honor your body and where it is in your cycle, and then learning the time, manner, and place to do the hard things. So for women, I just learned this past year that I shouldn't be doing some of the hard things around intermittent fasting around certain times of my period. Yep. And I also learned that I shouldn't be cold plunging the week of my period. Again, like those hard things, your body is going through so many different things during different parts of the, you go. I'm like, tell us all the things.
No, well, I was just going to say, this is where I think cold plunging can be great. I mean, it causes something called hormesis. It's hormesis. It's challenging your body in a new way, causing it to adapt. But if you're a person with low body temperature, especially when you have low body temperature, cold extremities, hypothyroid, some other issues, you got to be really careful with it, and also around your cycle, because it's going to decrease for a time, it's going to decrease inflammation, but also decrease blood flow for a period of time. So it's really, and I'm also not an everyday cold plunge person. I really think you can get a lot of benefits if you do it twice a week. Even 3 times a week. But take off the week of your cycle. I agree with that. But I do think that, sometimes less is more. And a similar thing with fasting. I think that, let's talk about the early church. We've talked about the Bible a fair amount and that being truth. And they didn't have you fast all the time, every day. I mean, there are seasonal fasts. The early church fathers, they tended to fast on Wednesdays and Fridays, and they would still eat dinner, but they would do some form of fasting. And so I do think that, again, we're in a society where oftentimes it's cookie cutter, one size fits all. But again, this gets really back to personalized medicine, personalized lifestyle in terms of your lifestyle medicine. What's the best for you? But it's a great point.
Yeah, totally. And I know that we could do a whole episode just on that. But I do want to touch on one thing that you mentioned about with the Bible and fasting. This is one thing that I have been really convicted of recently is I've talked with y'all about Dr. John at Archetype Health. He is my functional medicine doctor. And so he has me fasting now only 2 days a week, actually. And so now my mind is blown that you're saying that in the Bible, they only did it twice a week, because that's cool.
Well, I would say it's not, many of the Jews fasted once to twice a week, okay? But the early church fathers carried that on. And so if you would go read about so we have the apostles, and then the people that were the disciples of the apostles, a lot of them did a Wednesday, the early church did a fast on Wednesdays and Fridays.
Okay, cool. But I have been really convicted recently of, I know that I've been fasting now for about 5 years. I've done all different versions of it. At this point, I've landed on the 2 times a week. I typically do an 18-hour fast once a week, which forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, but basically I'm looking for a glucose fast. And then my second fast a week is either 24 to 36 hours. So basically I can get into, I always pronounce this wrong, autophagy. Autophagy, thank you. And so I'm really looking for those long-term health benefits to come from this. It's not about weight loss for me at this point. It really is about the health benefits to my body. And I have felt so convicted recently, and the Lord has used several different passages in scripture recently to be like, okay, Heather, so you're fasting because you know these health benefits, and you know that people did it in the Bible, and you know people did it back in primal times just because they were searching for food. They weren't just always going to their, fridge or their pantry 15 times a day to eat. But are you really utilizing those fasts the way that I intended them to benefit your spirit as well? And so to me, that has been just like, oh man, gut punch. Like, Lord, you have to teach me all over again that, again, it's like he designed it so perfectly for your body. He knew back then that when they were fasting, they were also having these internal body and physical health benefits, but they probably didn't even really know that. And I have just felt so convicted about being really more mindful of being in deep prayer, or saying, Lord, what is something that you want to bring to mind for this fast, so that I can make sure not only am I doing it for the physical health benefits, but truly to be in communion with you and for spiritual health as well. And that has been something that has really kind of rocked me to my core this year as well.
Yeah, it's so good. There's such a connection between our mental health and our physical health, and our spiritual health and our physical health. And so it's, take care of our spirit. It really helps the body, in a huge way. Well, Heather, I'm so grateful for you coming on and sharing today. It's been a fun conversation. Let us know a little bit more about where we can, follow you and find out more about what you're up to.
Yeah, for sure. So like we mentioned, I am on the Healthy by Heather Brown podcast. That's my podcast. I've been doing it now for a little over 2 years. I absolutely love it. And I had Dr. Josh Axe on my show. So definitely go look at his episode. You'll be blown away by all the incredible wisdom he shares, of course. And then also I'm at Healthy by Heather Brown on Instagram. That's where I really enjoy finding and sharing attainable health tips for women. A lot of times the women that are coming to me are super basic and they say like, I am tired of going through all these things and not being able to decipher what is actually happening in my body. I don't know how to get back to the Lord. I don't know how it's all interconnected. And I just want a place to start. And so I really just try to share little bits and pieces over there that help you have action plans day by day. So you're not just lost and wondering and not sure where to even begin. And I truly am so personable on Instagram. Like that is where my people are. So please DM me. I love praying for you, chatting with you, all the things. And then last but not least, you can find me on my website. It's mylifewellloved.com. And on there's lots of free resources, including an intermittent fasting guide. And so Dr. Axe, if it's okay with you, I'll shoot you the link to the freebie on my intermittent fasting information so you can link it in the show notes. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Well, Heather, thanks so much for coming on today. Thanks everybody for listening to another episode of the Ancient Health Podcast, where each and every week we dive into the principles of how to heal and how to live your best life using ancient forms of medicine. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thanks again, Heather.
Thank you so much. I had a blast.